Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the virtual CISO moment. Mishaal Khan joins us. He is vCISO Cybersecurity Practice Lead with Mindsight, also the co-author of the Phantom CISO. Mishaal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Greg, for having me.
I had to smile a little bit there because I did forget to ask the other question that I always ask before we start is like, how would you like to be introduced? So I just read off your LinkedIn, but is there anything else that I should introduce before we start our conversation?
I would say my three areas of specialization now have become cybersecurity, privacy, and open source intelligence. So that's how I usually introduce myself.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. First, I want to start by hearing about your story, how you got involved into the cyber world and where you're at today.
Sure. To be honest, I never thought I would be in cybersecurity specifically. I started off with, general IT, being IT help desk support, coming from a background as a kid with lots of computer parts around me, playing games, hacking into games, cheat codes. So I always had that interest of breaking stuff in order to figure out how to kind of how things work.
Yeah, me too.
Whether
I broke a lot of stuff. I don't know if I fixed them, but I broke a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was mostly like software and hardware, so kind of on both realms. And that kind of led me to the IT field, IT support. Security back then was pretty boring. It was just firewalls and maybe switches. And then later on, I realized I have this skill set of breaking into websites, phishing. I was doing phishing stuff for just for fun, and then to help out people. Hey, I've been hacked. What do I do? I'm like, all right, here's how you protect yourself. MFA, password managers. They weren't that common back then, but they were solutions to problems as well. So the more I got into helping people within cybersecurity and also some ethical hacking, people asked, "Hey, could you break into this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like, "I could get paid for this." So then I switched fields. I'm like, you know what? Let's get into cybersecurity, and then got into ethical hacking, and then eventually consulting. So now, as a CISO, I'm more on the strategy side of things, but I also have one foot on the technical side.
So you also wrote the book, The Phantom CISO. Well, you co-authored, I should say.
Yes,
Um,
right.
so tell us a little bit about that. What is it about? And I'm really curious about the title. What is the title about?
Yes, it's a new phrase that we coined, the Phantom CISO. So it's we see this a lot in our industry where there's IT directors or cybersecurity professionals more on the technical side of things, and they have responsibilities similar to what a CISO should have, yet they don't have the title, they don't have the pay, they don't have everything else that a CISO has. So those are the type of people who are phantom CISOs. They're not CISOs yet, but they have all the roles and responsibilities of a CISO. And that's what the book is about, how to be a cybersecurity leader, how to get out of that mindset and be a true CISO and do your own gap analysis. And when I did a gap analysis on myself, I had a lot of technical skills to be a security leader, but I didn't have a lot of the soft skills. So the book has a combination of both on how to develop the technical skills needed to understand security risks, threats properly, and then how to talk to a CFO, talk to a CIO, the board of directors. If they don't understand your concerns and you're speaking technical, the message is not going to go through and security is not going to get handled. So the book, tends to solve that gap, the problems within the cybersecurity leadership industry.
I think that's great. I also come from a technical background, kind of grew up in IT and the networking side. And I was actually surprised when I was going for my CISSP that networking was not
Right.
was not my number one strongest suit. Actually, risk management was, which really got me to think it's like maybe I should continue to pursue a career there. But you're right about soft skills too, because one of the things that I always tell folks, as far as one of the most impactful certifications that I've ever had nothing to do with the technology field. It was through Toastmasters, because you're right.
Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate. Nobody wants to hear this technical giga mumbo jumbo, as a former
Yes.
boss of mine once said. But you said something very interesting in your background that I want to pick up on before we move on. You mentioned that you started in IT help desk, and there's a lot of debate back and forth about how to get into the cyber side of information security. Do you need to be in IT? Sometimes people say, well, you should start at the help desk. Since you did, I'm curious as to, from your perspective, how did starting at the IT help desk help you with your cyber career?
Oh, tremendously. Like I had no idea back then, but in looking back today, if I didn't know how printers work, how networking happened, or how computers are set up initially with minimum security or default settings or default credentials on your switch, because IT support does most of those things, I would have had no idea how to secure them properly. So you need to know the bits and bytes of things, how things work before you go up on a higher level and start advising on those things. Because I see people who don't have that background of help desk support, IT technician, and network engineer. When they start consulting, they start saying stupid things. They're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
just fix this way." I'm like, "Do you even know how a printer works?" Or
Yeah, that's such a fundamental thing. I often say that it's very hard for you to secure something if you don't know what it is, aspects about what you're securing. Sometimes I would think that maybe I'm a little bit biased because I came up in networking as well, and did help desk back in the day. I didn't start at help desk, but one of the early positions I was in had a very good program of rotating the network engineers into the help desk. Back then, I thought it was a waste of time and talent, but I actually learned an awful lot on the help desk, primarily not only how to deal with customers and people, but also learning about the business. So, everybody out there listening, uh, that's not bad advice. Now, I know that you do a lot now as far as being a virtual CISO, and that I'm assuming that means that you work with small and mid-sized businesses as part of your ongoing duties. From your perspective, what is one or maybe a couple of the most impactful, it could be cybersecurity threats, information security threats, mixture of both, to small and mid-sized businesses today?
Yeah, I would say to the SMB space, there's the majority of the threats are the normal threats that everyone else has. They're just not taking care of the basics. So things like phishing is still probably number one. Everyone's getting phished and scammed and social engineered. It's
Mhm.
the SMBs that are not well prepared for it from a training perspective, from a tools perspective, gap analysis. They don't know what their risks are because they don't perform cybersecurity risk assessments as much. So I would say it's the low-hanging fruit, phishing essentially, and social engineering that's still prevalent. They get affected hard by it because of the lack of, advice in that field.
And there's so much of an issue with regards to that as well, too. You mentioned just a few moments ago about folks that try to jump into cyber without the background of the IT help desk and all that. I don't know about you, but I've seen it in the virtual CISO space where um, we've come behind, my firm's come behind to help a client that had a virtual CISO before that actually ended up making the situation worse by providing bad advice. They don't know what they're doing type deal. Have you run across that at all
With other CISOs?
with other
Yeah,
virtual
yeah.
CISOs?
I mean, I have. So I've been the CISO of about eight, nine different companies
Hmm.
at any given time. And it's, yeah, when I come in and I see the situation, they're like, who did this? Who gave you this advice? Or previous, either IT director did or virtual CISO did, a previous firm did. And I'm like, how? Like, and when I dig just a little bit deeper, just look at their LinkedIn profile, I'm like, all right, this person had no technical background. They were either a CIO, CFO, or had an MBA in something. I don't see any technical certs or any position which shows that they've done you know, uh, networking or help desk or programmer or whatever. And then I realized I'm like, that's why they're giving such advice that, hey,
Hmm.
who needs password managers or all MFA is the same and just go with this or what. I'm like, wow. So you didn't even start with a gap analysis, a risk assessment. What about budgetary assessments? Small companies care a lot about money and budget and they don't have open budget. So let's start with prioritizing your risk. They did nothing like that. And so they just went and did vulnerability scans. They're like, let's do a pen test. Okay, what was your pen test? It was actually a vulnerability scan. That shows they don't have that technical acumen to know the difference between a vulnerability scan, a pen test, a social engineering attack, or any one of those things. So I'm like, all right, things need to get fixed soon. And usually my goal is to get things done fast, without any BS, without any filters. And I'm like, let's get stuff done because I know how things work. Let's do it. Let's talk less and do more.
I love that you brought up about the vulnerability assessment pen testing. And I just was talking about this on a podcast, not mine, that was recorded yesterday. I probably won't drop. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. I'm having that senior moment. But we talked about like, well, what's a war story? And one of the clients that we started with, they had all this stuff from their previous virtual CISO. They ended up kicking out the virtual CISO and hiring us because I guess they had realized that there were some other gaps there. But they said, well, we're not that bad because we had this penetration test done, this internal penetration test done. It was great. In fact, it was perfect. And okay, there's a red flag word, right? Nothing is ever perfect. So go in and look at it and what it is. You can appreciate this because you probably have used this too. Have you used Greenbone before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a Greenbone vulnerability assessment that was set to discover, I guess by default, which is probably ICMP. Well, ICMP was blocked across the enterprise. So the assessment came back with nothing, no vulnerabilities.
It's just pings.
And then from the penetration test side, they said, well, we didn't find any vulnerabilities. We investigated. We spent 3 days investigating this, and we're happy to tell you that you've passed your penetration test. And so I told them, I'm like, this is garbage. This is, I mean, and they paid a lot of money for it as well too.
Wow.
So, but you said that you one of the things that I don't talk too much about on the on the podcast is talking about virtual CISOs here again. You said about being a CISO for like 8 or 9 organizations. How do you juggle all that? How do you keep it separate in your mind, on your machine, in your life? I mean, it's got to be stressful.
Yeah, it's tough, but you have to be very organized from the get-go. Different files, different structures. You have to do time management very well. And one of the things I talk about in the book as well are those type of soft skills: people management, time management. You can take things personally. So from all the vCISO clients that I may have, some will be very difficult and put more stress on you. Some will be very easy. You can't take things personal to heart. You have to take this as a business. And as I juggle through all of this, sure, I need a lot of downtime as well to kind of de-stress and so that burnout doesn't happen, because that's another big issue in this industry. Everyone's limits are different. Mine is a little bit higher. I can take a lot before burnout kicks in. But the big thing is I'm conscious about it. I know that I'm approaching that threshold. I should take a break. So I actually take a lot of breaks during the day. I may work for 1 or 2 hours, then I'll take a half an hour break, then another 1 or 2 hours, then 10-minute break, so I put in breaks throughout the day. I actually put in workouts during the daytime, either morning or lunch time. I go to the gym, work out for an hour and a half, come back.
I've got a workout bench right behind me. It's got books on it right now, but I've got what are the Max Pro cable machine, so I can do all sorts of cable type exercises there. So I'm definitely with you on that.
Yeah, it's amazing for your mind. Like after a good workout, a very strong workout, you feel you feel fresh because the blood flow goes to your brain and stuff. And so I would say my secret formula is a balanced combination of work, fine, but I consider a workout as work. That's part of work.
Yeah.
I put it as part of my schedule, but a good workout, good sleep, good 8 hours sleep, maybe 7 hours of sleep, and good nutrition. It's the combination of these 3 that keeps me fresh and healthy.
And you mentioned about time and time management. One of the things I emphasize to the virtual CISOs on our staff is don't give away time. This isn't a business thing per se. Obviously it is. There's some business ramifications. If you give away time, you build up expectations that then maybe the rest of the team can't can't meet, and it's not fair to the rest of the team. And I've actually had people
Right.
on my team, like they kind of slough it off. It's like, well, that's just the kind of person I am. I like to give more. And I'm like, every time I hear that, I'm like, that's horrible. Just stop doing that. And not only that, though, but you're doing it to yourself, where it's time is one of those things that you can't get back. It's a
Hmm.
resource that you'll never ever get back. So I think
Right.
time management
Right.
is
There's a
huge.
skill to say no, so you need to know how to
Yes.
say no. And then I mentioned one of those skills here, and like, how do you say no to if you're in the industry of pleasing everyone, pleasing your client? It's pretty tough to say it, but there's an art and a skill to say it.
Well, and actually, it's a good point too, because an effective virtual CISO is not going to, and this is really works for all consultants in general. You don't want to tell the client what they want to hear. You need to tell them what they need to hear. Now, you
Yes.
get a lot of consultants out there that'll tell them what they want to hear, because why? They want to keep the money flowing in,
Hmm.
and ultimately, in the end, that ends up backfiring. You'll lose clients, you'll lose
Reputation.
reputation, you'll
Yeah.
lose working with folks, and sometimes I have to counsel people on that as well too. One other thing about the virtual, before we move on, one other thing about the virtual CISO environment that I love that you touched on is, like, the first thing that you need to do is either do a risk or a gap assessment. What does that look
Mhm.
like usually to an SMB, the
Yeah, for an
process?
SMBs, I usually go with a standard framework like the CIS top 18 controls.
Hmm.
That's, I would say, 99.9% of the time, that's what I
So
start with.
you and I would have a little bit of an argument there. Not really, but it's like I'm on the NIST CSF side, you're on the CIS. It's like, which is better? I think there was
Hey,
a poll out on
one is
LinkedIn about it.
easier.
Well, I don't know. Actually, it's like they both have their nuances. But no, I
Sure.
agree with you. Start with a framework, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right. No, start with something that's simple. So it really depends on the SMB. I've started with NIST frameworks with some, and at the end of the day, it's just a framework. It's just guidelines. So when I'm doing a CIS or NIST, with some I do HIPAA if they're healthcare and stuff,
Hmm.
I say start somewhere, but you have to be broad. It's not like I do it like a checklist. It's something that's sitting in the background. Sure, I'll go through it. I'll ask certain questions around it, but it's more of a discussion. If we talk about endpoint security, I'll read through, what's in the CIS or NIST about it, but then we'll have an open-ended conversation with product solutions, with practical approaches, timelines, and budgets. None of those things are mentioned in any of those frameworks. A framework
Right.
is just there to guide the conversation, and that's what I use them for. I also use them for metrics so that if I do one and then we do it again after 1 year, you have a point of comparison and saying, have you increased your cybersecurity posture? Have you become better or worse, or by how much? This is how I measure success.
No, I think that's a great approach. Well, getting back to one of the things that we were talking about before we got off on a little tangent with regards to the workout stuff, and I should say that after I'm done with this, I'm going out to walk, maybe do about 3/4 of a mile or a mile. I try to get
Yes.
in the 10,000 steps, but there's that breathe thing. Sometimes I got to get out. I don't know what the temperature is where you're at, but it's like right now outside, it's probably about 83, 84 degrees. It's getting warmer, maybe a little bit less. But inside, it's like they cool this darn place so much I'm
I know.
freezing. So I got to go outside to warm up too.
Yeah,
But
too frozen.
in addition to having a good nutrition and exercise program, is there anything that you do as far as like a hobby in order to get away and decompress? Because we have a serious problem in our industry of burnout, and particularly
Hmm.
with the job market the way it is. Some people, I mean, when I was quote growing up in this field, uh, I never lapsed in employment because it was always fairly easy to find the next job. Um, but now it's you have some people that are 6 months, a year out, and they're still looking. Very stressful. Should do some hobbies to get away. What's one of the things that you do to
Yeah.
get away besides the exercise?
Well, I like to draw. I
Draw.
like, yeah.
Okay.
So drawing is something that's creative. It just, uses a different part of my brain, and I like to draw, color. I'm an artist, whatever
Is
little
that
time
is
I have
that
left.
your Iron Man up there? It looks like
It is,
with
yeah,
Tony Stark.
it is right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, it was just a little bit under the logo there. That's
Uh-huh,
very good.
yeah.
I like
Yeah, I
that
drew
too.
that with markers and stuff. So yeah, I like drawing stuff like that. Things that are, that make me happy. They're interesting, and when you draw, there's a certain feeling of accomplishment because you've
Hmm.
created something out of nothing, out of a white piece of paper, out of simple pencils or markers, and then the end result, you get to see it and appreciate it. Whereas in our line of field, in our work, you protect someone, you implement a security control, you don't really see it. You don't,
Right.
there's nothing tangible about it. So this is another way that I de-stress.
Well, and there's that left brain, right brain. I guess like you're taking a break from. Oh, geez, which one is the analytical side? The right side?
One of the two. I don't want to screw it up.
I can never remember, but
Right.
but you take a break from one by doing some of the other, and even like writing book, like information
Yeah.
security for small and mid-sized businesses. Third edition just came out 2 weeks ago. It's on Amazon. Okay, commercial done. Go buy it. Go buy your book as well too, the Phantom CISO. There, yeah. And let's do a still shot of both of us holding up the book. There we go. Okay, that's going to
I
become a
also drew the
profile.
cover of this book. I drew it on an iPad and then online, and I kind of that was part of my artistic skills there as well.
I love it. I love it. I did not design this cover. I paid someone for it. So, future plans. Are you planning another book, for example? Are you planning to release a drawing book, or what are your future plans?
I am. So I'm planning on more books. So one on privacy in the future, something around practical privacy, something that normal folks can actually implement. I'm also going to have a joke book come out soon for
Ah,
tech folks like us. So that's
I'm looking
probably in a
forward to
few,
that.
yeah, probably next month at Black Hat or something. But yeah, those are some of my near-term future projects.
That's awesome. Well, Michal, it was fabulous having you on. I totally enjoyed the conversation. Could get lost in this, continuing to talk, but a lot of laughs. I'm looking forward to reading the Phantom CISO. Looking forward to seeing your joke book later on. And I hope you have. I know you're going to Black Hat, right?
I am, yeah.
I
I'm
wish I was
speaking at
going.
Black Hat and FCon.
Ah, okay. And what's your talk on?
It's about AI, so hacking using AI technology like deep fakes and voice cloning. And DEF CON, I'm
Ah.
doing OSINT, Introduction to OSINT.
I wish I could be there for both, but particularly the Black Hat one. Is your are your sessions going to be available recorded after the fact?
Hopefully. They didn't
Okay.
say anything, but yeah, hopefully.
Particularly the deep fake AI and how that's becoming a really 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 big problem is
Yeah,
is one of my soapbox things as well too. So
so easy. It
it is. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the time and look forward to chatting with you in the future.
was my pleasure, Greg. Thank you.
And everybody, stay secure.